this computer. Okay, so welcome. We're going to present some information today for you to be aware of as your child moves to the middle school and how the IEP is sort of administered and what the supports and services are and what they look like. You'll also be meeting most of our staff who work with sixth graders, so they have a chance to say hello to you so you can connect a face to a name. So welcome. And I'm going to just go to the next slide here. Okay. As I said, you'll meet some of our special educators and our service providers. Part of this presentation will also be an overview of special education at Wellesley Middle School, how we deliver those IEP services, what you might expect in terms of schedules and how services may impact student schedules. Most of our specialized instruction happens in learning centers, and so you'll hear about how we run those. We'll also have a chance to hear a little bit about our specialized programs in the building. We'll have a brief overview of those. There's 4 of them altogether. And then we'll share some helpful tips for you to know as you prepare as a parent or guardian yourself for the middle school transition and your student. There will be an opportunity to ask questions, and I encourage you to use, I think there's a Q&A feature that should be there, so I encourage you to use that as questions come up. Okay, the first slide will have Elise Chismadian join, and she is one of our team chairs, so I'll send it over to Elise.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to WMS. As Christina said, I'm Elise Chismadia. I'm one of the team chairs here, and I'm also the team chair at Bates. So, hey, Bates families. So the way we deliver our IEP services here, they're done at a couple different places. We are in the gen ed classroom. We have a combination of special educators or support staff that are in the classrooms with the students. We ensure that the accommodations are happening in those classrooms. That's where we provide our inclusion support and ensure that the modifications and all methodologies are followed. So in the Learning Center, and we'll get to this later on, so everyone has a class in their schedule. So that's where the Learning Center is scheduled into their program. And that's where specialized instruction happens. And that's where a lot of the IEP services are delivered, and our delivery is based on the IEP goals. And so that's where the direct instruction truly happens. We also offer in small group instruction for students who need a special educator to deliver the class outside of the gen ed setting. And that's where the higher level modifications and content are broken down and presented at a slower pace.
Thanks, Elise. Next, we have Leah Lawrence, our other team chair here in the department.
Hi. So in addition to the supports that Elise spoke about, we have 4 specialized programs. We have our language-based program, skills, integrated specialized services, or ISS, and the therapeutic learning center. And each of those service programs provide services both in and out of the general education setting and wraparound support. So it could be a paraprofessional who goes with the student or a special education teacher who's with the students in general education settings. And kind of going with them throughout the day. We also have related services that are provided both individually and in small groups, depending on the needs of the students. So we have speech and language therapy that is delivered often one-on-one by a speech language pathologist. We also have social skills instruction or social pragmatics, which is delivered in a small group setting, occupational or physical therapy, counseling, again, which is typically delivered individually, assistive technology at the middle school, which is most often done through a consultative model, hearing or vision services for students that require that, and then adapted PE for the handful of students that require those services. And as I mentioned, consultation. So with our model and our schedule here at the middle school, consultation through all service providers, general education, special education teachers, and all related services is built in. So we're consulting at a minimum of once per cycle and more frequently as needed.
Thanks, Leah.
And the next one's mine too. So each of our, for sixth grade, it's broken into 4 houses, and each of the houses consists of a science, ELA, math, and social studies teacher that only teaches within that house. There's a special education teacher attached to each house and a specialized program that's also attached to each house. Um, and within the house model, we have advisories, which in elementary is kind of more equivalent maybe to homeroom, except it happens in the middle of the day. So it's kind of a home base for students, also for social emotional learning, and it's taught by one of the general education teachers on that house, as well as a second adult. It could be a special ed teacher, an elective teacher, another staff member from out the building.
Thanks, Leah. Next up, we have Ann Cole, special educator here in sixth grade.
Hi, Ann Cole. Got to get our microphones right here. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what Learning Center is. It's a separate class on your student schedule, and it takes place during the time of an elective. So unlike elementary school, where sometimes services are delivered while academic instruction is going on and students kind of feel like they're missing something, in this case, that doesn't happen because it does not happen during a time when a math class or a science class or social studies is being taught. The Learning Center class is led by a special educator. Whoops, we need to go back. Oh dear, we are seeing all kinds of things here. Going back here to our Learning Center slide, thank you. Led by a special educator. It also may include some support professionals that come in and out during that time period. It also provides a home base and a touch point during the day with familiar adults. So my students, even though they may not see me during a certain block, may stop by many times during the day to check in, retrieve materials that they need, just touch base with me about questions or concerns that they have. During the Learning Center class, we provide specially designed instruction, and they relate to the academic goals that are in the students' IEPs. And we also provide instruction to build across the curriculum. So for example, if they've been taught some new concepts in science, we will review those, possibly preview what's coming next. We do test preparation, teach them basic study skills about how to study. Actually, I'm going off the slide a little bit, but that's kind of goes with the next point about executive functioning. And most importantly, I really think that the home-based aspect of the Learning Center really helps provide a smooth transition between elementary and middle school. Middle school, they're starting to move between classes, between 7 different teachers, and the Learning Center becomes their spot where they come in, and if they need a little help figuring out where they're supposed to go next or how to talk to a teacher, that's what we do. The Learning Center time in your child's IEP is adjusted to meet with service providers such as speech and language providers or school psychologists. So if your child gets that type of service, it will come out of the time during the day that would be the Learning Center time. So they would have Learning Center every day. Part of one of those days might be spent with another service provider. This helps the kids not miss any other content. And that's that.
Thanks, Ann. So next up, we're going to talk a little bit about the schedule. Elise will come back to us and kind of set the stage.
All right, so we have 7 periods in our day, and the morning classes rotate, the afternoon classes rotate, and then there's a steady block in the middle. Christina, do you want to go to the visual, the next one? Okay, so you can see our morning period 1, 2, and 3. So it's a 6-day cycle. So even though it's a 5-day week, it just flows into the next week and like a conveyor belt just drops. So it goes, so day 1, day 4, replicate. Day 2 is a BCA, 5 is a BCA. And I promise you, your kids will get used to it. And all the teachers in the hallway, we walk around and we have this on our necks and we can help anyone at any time. So advisory, as mentioned, is the same every day, 10:17, 10:32. And D block is also just the same, 10:36 to 11:21. Then the afternoon classes rotate as well. The lunch, you can see grade 6 is the same every day. So that doesn't rotate. That's 11:25 to 11:50. So again, we have a morning rotation, an afternoon rotation, and that middle of the day stays the same. And you'll notice middle school time is all on these odd times, like a 10:17 to a 10:32. So that's something else to get used to as well.
Thanks, Elise. Okay, up next is Ari, one of our special educators. I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. Oh, getting some feedback. I'm Ari Parsvan. I'm a sixth grade special educator. And we just went over the typical schedule without Learning Center. But as you can see, you can see a sample of what someone's day will look like. And you can see from day 1 to day 2 that there is that rotation between the first half and the second half of the day. You'll notice that D block, which is that math block, is always the same. After an advisory will always be the same. Lunch block is during D block. Lunch block is after after D block. And so it's broken up into 3 lunch sessions, which is for the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Can we go to the next slide? So as you can see, there's your child may be on may have different amounts of Learning Center per cycle. Here you can see there's a 3-day Learning Center cycle, and the Learning Center periods are typically 45 minutes. And so let me take a look. Here you can see the rotation as well. And it will be every other day. So it'll either be on the even days or the odd days. Services are also provided during the same period that students have Learning Center. So if your student has 2 times Learning Center per cycle, the next service they might have, which could be seeing a psychologist or a speech pathologist, will happen on the same period. And then can we go to the next slide? Thank you. And then here's what it looks like when your child has everyday Learning Center. So you'll see that rotation through the second half of the day. It's really one thing that we really focus on when students get here is reinforcing the understanding of this changing schedule. So the first couple days we build the schedule. I like to help them color code it so they can see it easily. And like I believe Elise said, we have people in the hallways to help kids transition from next place to ease that transition for them.
Thanks, Ari.
Thank you.
Something just to make sure parents are aware of is that we're showing you an example schedule. This isn't necessarily every student's schedule, but that Learning Center, whether it's offered at 3 times per cycle or 6 times per cycle on the IEP, it could meet any time during classes that you see in this example that are elective courses. So it could be a morning learning center. It could be an afternoon learning center. It could maybe be a D block. No, it can't be because that's a teaching. But anywhere where you see an elective is where there could be a learning center. And we're just showing you an example of one child's potential schedule. Okay. Up next, we have information about some of our specialized programs and the service providers that provide some of those services we've been talking about, such as speech or counseling. So first up, we have our amazing TLC team, and they'll introduce themselves and talk to you a little bit about what the program entails. And this is a very specialized program that does not apply to all students, obviously, that are coming into the middle school. It's a small population of students. And that's a recommendation that's made by the team, which program a student is coming into. So I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Emily Creedon. I'm the therapeutic intervention specialist.
And I'm Elena Babson. I'm one of the special educators in TLC.
So as Christina mentioned, this is a specialized program. So you would most likely know at this point if your child is recommended for this program. But so we'll just give like a quick overview. Actually, there's other people on here too that are not with us right now. So if other people want to unmute themselves who are part of TLC and introduce themselves, that would be great.
Sure. Hi, I'm Steve Rose, school psychologist. I work with the Therapeutic Learning Center program.
Hi, Stephanie O'Brien. I'm the behavior analyst for the Therapeutic Learning Center and the middle school.
So any of you feel free to chime in. I'll just give a really brief overview. So we're a therapeutic program. We provide specialized instruction and academic support in the therapeutic setting, as well as the academic and social emotional support in the general education classroom. So we're kind of a wraparound program. We're providing support both in and out of the classroom for students throughout their day and throughout all aspects of their day. We provide behavioral supports to increase access to school and learning. And again, the instruction is provided similar to like a typical LC that was already described. So we have that, and we provide kind of more of that therapeutic supports throughout their day. And it's really individualized. I think that's kind of like the most important thing. It's really individualized for each student, depending on their needs at kind of any given point. That might change for each student during their time here. And we are a multi-grade program, so we're 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add.
Yeah. And learning centers look pretty similar to a typical learning center. Students would be given academic support, support and homework, as well as different therapeutic supports and instructions around things like coping skills or executive functioning.
That's it.
Thank you, team. Up next is a description of our language-based program, and I'll let Rachel chime in here and introduce herself.
Hi there, my name's Rachel Parzavand, and I am the teacher for the language-based program. And that again is a small program for students with language-based learning disabilities. Two major things happen for kids in this program. The major one is that we have a multisensory approach that is also systematic and also explicit in teaching reading, writing, and math in small group settings as appropriate. I teach the reading class. And so your students, if they are in the program, will see me for that. And they may also see me for English, which is also taught in a small group setting with broken down pacing and explicit instruction. And, also infusing it with the phonics that they're learning in their reading class to kind of wrap that all around them. Additionally, some students, not all students, may also have a second class in a pull-out for math, and that would be taught by Emma Dodge, who would be teaching them in a small setting as well. There's also Learning Center, and there's also support in the classroom for students who, if they are in small group ELA and math, they'll be with me and a second adult or Miss Dodge and a second adult, but there'll also be a second adult provided for them in science and social studies. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Great. Okay, up next, the amazing ISS team. I'll let you introduce yourselves.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Crean, and my co-teacher is also Liz Egan. I don't think she's had a chance to make it on yet because she is teaching a class, but that is A-okay. And yeah, we are the Integrated Specialized Services Program, or ISS. We meet the needs of the students whose disabilities cross domains. We're taught typically through small group or individualized designed instruction. And we do that in our own learning center. We have 2 different rooms so we can split up during the day. It's inclusion in both academic and elective environments and is provided by program staff. So that could be one of the many amazing behavior technicians that we have in our program, or TAs that help us out. Or Miss Egan or myself could pop in and assist with students as they go throughout their day in their inclusion classes. The Learning Center instruction is provided in the classroom. It's very similar to the learning centers that have been described by the other staff members at this point. And related services will also be provided in the program classroom or through pull-out. They could go to Karen's class, for example, who you'll meet here in a moment, or to Mr. Bugden's OT room. Yeah, that's the ISS Integrated Specialized Services Program. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Chris. It's important to note also that the ISS program spans all 3 grades. Language-based does not. It kind of lives in 6th grade, and then there's different teacher that teaches both 7th and 8th. At least that's the model right now. Okay, next up we have the next amazing team, which is our skills team, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Thank you, Christina. My name is Jess Troffitter. My counterpart, Becky Couture, is also teaching and hopes to join shortly. One of the distinguishing features of our program is the use of applied behavior analysis. Becky Couture and I are both board certified behavior analysts, so we use that work in supporting students with academics and also any behavior needs that they might have as well. We are also a multi-grade program, so we span grades 6 through 8. Inclusion support is based on individualized needs as dictated by the IEP. Social pragmatic skills are also taught throughout the day, like all day long. And our learning center instruction occurs within the program, just as others have described, adhering closely to the model that we observe at each grade level. And additionally, we have students that receive related services as dictated by their IEPs. So that could include speech, OT, PT, and some students receive adapted physical education support as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jess. We're going to meet our speech language pathologist. I'll let them introduce themselves.
There, I'm Katie Erickson. I'm one of the speech and language pathologists here at WMS. And I'm Karen Venditto, the other SLP here. Our role as SLPs at WMS, it's kind of all encompassing. So one of the biggest parts of our role is just being an active team member for our students and for their teams. So that includes consulting with our students' team of teachers, both regular education teachers and special education teachers, collaborating with the teams, making sure that we know what's happening in the classes, and so that we can be working on explicit skills in our sessions together with your child to support them in achieving their academic goals. We also provide education to your students' team members so that they understand what your child's learning profile is and how best to support them in the classroom. We advocate for students on our caseload. That is part of our consultation with the team. And we also participate in team meetings and contribute to IEP development, talking about accommodations that your child might need in their IEP, developing goals and objectives connected to their learning strengths and challenges.
Okay, thank you, Katie. And then I will just chat a little bit about the actual intervention, and that's the service that we provide. And that can be through a variety of service delivery models. Typically, it is, under the realm of the special education setting, and it is either provided, within a small group class or the learning center, or in a direct service where students are coming to work with us, like people have described, during one of those learning center class times. And during that time, we're providing specialized instruction and helping students develop strategies specific to their needs. And that is aligned in supporting the student's goal that they have on their IEP related to either communication, receptive or expressive language, vocabulary, and or social pragmatic skills. And as a part of that, we are, documenting and tracking a student's progress towards that goal and the individual skills. And then that is shared with families every quarter or term, so 4 times a year here at the middle school. You get a progress report about your students' progress towards each goal in their IEP. And then the last piece is, just being a part of the student's team. Will be participating in evaluations, formal assessments or informal assessments, and looking at the students' progress, over their years, and how that is reflecting their overall academic success. And that's a little bit of our role here.
Thanks, Katie and Karen. Next up, we have some of our school psychologists, or hopefully all of them here. I'll let them introduce themselves and talk about their work.
Hi, everyone. I'm David Goldsmith, one of the school psychologists, and I'm going to let my colleagues introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Jordan Owens, another one of the school psychologists.
Hi, Steve Rose, another school psychologist. In addition to working with the TLC, the Therapeutic Learning Center, I work with other students throughout the building.
Okay, so one of the things that, in addition to the major transition to the middle school that we wanted to make people aware of is sort of the difference in how counseling is delivered here. You may have seen it in other slides, but we tend to do individual counseling here, which often works really well. I think students are really excited about having their own time to talk about their issues. We do this for a couple of reasons. One, as you can see, the schedule is pretty complicated. Two, for privacy reasons. And it's not to say that we wouldn't do group counseling. I will say I did even do a dyad as recently as last year. It worked really well for the two students. They had a connection outside of school and they supported each other around. We were working on anxiety issues, but we just think it's helpful for parents and for students to know that this change may be coming.
Yeah, I'll say a little bit about individual counseling that's scheduled, I think, as mentioned earlier, generally during a learning center period for students. The social skill instruction happens in small group sessions during the lunch block. So once per 6-day cycle, the students would receive a social skills small lunch group. So this is a little different than what David was referring to in terms of group counseling. This is specifically around social skill instruction.
And then we also provide psychological assessments for special education evaluations. So that could be for students that we service directly through counseling or any other students who are going through the 3-year evaluation process. We're the ones that do the cognitive testing or looking into executive functioning or attention. So just those full evaluations is also part of our role. So we may be interacting with some of your students, even if we don't see them for direct service.
And we continue on. We have a big role in the building and we work with all 3 grades. One of the things we do a lot of in addition to the counseling and social skills is we participate in the team meetings for our students. We help with IEP development. We do have to collaborate and consult with our entire staff, including administrators. And one other thing we do here, because there's 3 of us, we often attach ourselves to a grade and we kind of loop with them through their time here at the school, just to serve as the consultant so people know who to reach out to. But we all work with kids in 6th, 7th, and 8th.
And then finally, we also play a role in developing behavioral intervention plans, generally consult with our BCBA, Stephanie O'Brien, in putting those together and tracking, behavioral data. And I think that's it.
Thank you so much. So we're going to share some helpful tips, and I just want to remind participants, please, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A feature, and at the end of this talk, we'll address all those questions here. So next up, we have Sarah.
Hi, everyone. I am Sarah Chupka. I'm a 6th grade special educator. So typically sometime in August, mid-August, you'll get a letter notifying you of your child's liaison. And that person is the one to manage all aspects of the IEP. They are also a really good contact point. So communication is really important. So anytime you have questions, comments, concerns, that might be your best bet as to who to contact with. Of course, communication is important, but so is collaboration. So within our school day, we do have designated times once per cycle where we communicate and collaborate with your child's general educators, service providers, support professionals, anyone else who will work with your child. We are always in consultation and collaboration with them. And then if we go to the next slide, these are just some helpful tips for you of how to help your middle schooler succeed. Just like, consistency and routine is important at school, it's also really helpful at home. So, making sure they're checking their homework, checking the homework calendar if there's a homework calendar or agenda, how to study for quizzes and tests. Maybe they made flashcards, encouraging them to use those. Maybe they created a game, maybe letting them do that. And also just if they have questions, making sure that they advocate for themselves. So really building that strong connection with your child's teacher. It will also help with them in encouraging connections while they're here. I also just want to add that when they come in the fall, they are really supported and we are always here to help them. So I just want you to know that everything will be okay.
Thanks, Sarah. So what to know for the transition? As Sarah mentioned, summer letters will go to families around mid-August. Once you receive your letter, you're encouraged to reach out to that special educator via email. And then come in. You're also encouraged to come in for short visits, even if the special educator is not around. A lot of other team members might be around, and I certainly can escort you around the building if that sort of eases the stress of the start. So then once school starts, a lot of our liaisons will invite you to meet with them either via Zoom or in person to learn more, about the student, anything that might not be written on the IEP, something that's really good to keep in mind in the collaboration between home and school. The WMS website is up and running. There's lots of great resources there. So we encourage you to go look at that to orient yourself to some of the expectations for the middle school. Schedules for students, the full schedule is typically shared the first day, and they have an extended advisory period where they're there with their advisory teachers, and they're helping them sort of make heads or tails out of the schedule. But like we mentioned prior, even though it looks like, a very complex schedule, it's really not. Kids do kind of pick up on it pretty quick. And as Sarah mentioned, lots of people are helping your child, including liaisons, just making sure they know where to go. That is a common fear, and, try to manage that fear as much as possible. There'll be adults here. They don't want them to get lost and wander the hallways of our building. And then they do, the liaisons will also do a lot of reviewing and previewing with your child as needed. So I talked a little bit about the transition support already, but all teachers in the building help support this, and liaisons, those special educators assigned to work with you and your child, really keep a watchful eye on this. And they know if there's any disability specific, needs during this transition, they know to keep a watchful eye on that. Just want you to know that we are a team, and, developmentally, this time period of your child's life is very challenging for many reasons. And so you're going to feel that, they're going to feel that, and we know this. So we're there to support you as well. So just know that you're not alone. I think I don't know if we said this directly, but the liaisons that your child will have in 6th grade aren't necessarily the ones that will follow them throughout the year. They will change, in 7th and 8th, and I just want you to be aware. And that is around for supporting students that are in learning centers outside of programs, because in programs we span multiple grades. Okay, I'm going to pause here, and I don't know if Leah Lawrence is there and has been monitoring maybe our Q&A, or Elise.
Yeah, I have been. I've been responding to most of the questions. There are a couple that I'm responding to one right now, but I can just do it out loud if that's okay.
Yeah, let's do that. Then if one of our team members wants to chime in with anything helpful.
Yeah, so I'm just going to delete what I was writing. So one of our attendees asked who might be responsible for tracking certain behaviors that are showing up while a child is at school. For instance, this year the child had missed a lot of class time due to extended bathroom breaks, but parents didn't find out about this until halfway through the year. So parents are concerned, a new behavior may turn up, and who would be able to notice that, and how do we kind of prevent something from being missed?
Okay, that's a great question and a real concern. So it's a team approach. So I'll let maybe one of our special educators kind of chime in about what we might do. Yeah.
All right. So to let you know, as the liaison, say if that child was assigned to me in my caseload and was in my learning center class, my job is much bigger than just that 45-minute learning center class. I really take on the responsibility of keeping track of how that child's complete day is going, constantly checking in with teachers. I know we mentioned that we meet once a week with the teaching team, but that's not the only time that we communicate with them. I'm communicating with them before a class, after a class, in the middle of a class. And they will come to me immediately if something like that starts appearing. If one of the students is taking frequent bathroom breaks, or for some other reason is developing some type of avoidance behavior, and we will get on it as soon as possible. I'll speak, for myself and also for the rest of the team here, that it doesn't help us at all if we withhold information from you, because I feel that this is a collaborative process, and the more that we're on the same page, the more effective we will all be in supporting your child. So as soon as something comes up, if it's starting to emerge as a pattern, I would reach out and just email you and let you know this is happening. This is what we've done so far. This is our plan. And welcome any feedback and collaboration that you would have. The other thing to know is that you do not have to wait until your IEP meeting is due. You can communicate with us at any point in time, and we can assemble any kind of group of people that you want to speak to. So hopefully a situation, I think people feel like when they're coming to a large school like this, so my son or daughter might get lost in the shuffle. It's a very large school, but we make it small by dividing the kids into these small teaching teams of 4 assigned to a special educator. And within that much smaller world, you have the 4 eyes of your classroom teachers, your teaching assistants or people that are in the class, and the liaison. So your child is actually really kept track of all day long. So don't worry.
It's important also to remember that we operate under a bell schedule, and that bell rings and then they move to their next class, and they're spending these 45-minute chunks of time with one teacher teaching them, the 4 core classes or language or elective. So those teachers are noticing. It's not like one teacher in one space, multiple hours of the day. It's very different at the middle school. So we are noticing those things. The school guidance or school counselors rather, some of you may have gone to our all school orientation earlier this week, and hopefully you got a chance to meet Kate Mahoney and the amazing work that school counselors do to support our students socially, emotionally. If a student was in a program, it would also be the same oversight and same kind of communication. And there are students who are in a program because of difficulties accessing their day, like the one mentioned by that parent. So it would be sort of the same kinds of interventions. It may even be that a student is on a behavior plan for that. And so we have different levels of support related to each unique need.
Thanks. We have 2 kind of related questions. One was just, clarification of that students will not get their full schedule until the first day of school, as well as when, oops, I lost it, being provided the name of their liaison, and if someone could speak to opportunities to meet the liaison before and kind of see the space before. And I know we kind of touched on it, but I think those 3 kind of all go together if one of our 6th grade teachers wants to touch on that.
Can we start maybe, I don't know if program teacher is on here. I don't want to exclude programs, but how do you do it, program teachers? And then we'll come back to one of our 6th grade special educators. I don't know who's on here still. Okay.
Hi there. We good?
We good.
All right. So for program, you're going to get a letter from us as well as from your liaison. And so using that, you'll be able to contact me. And the couple of days before school starts, when we have teacher time to get our classrooms prepared, is a really good time to ask to come in. And we can meet for 20, 25 minutes. We can take a gander at their classes and kind of let them know where the bathrooms are beforehand. And I can do that, and any of the liaisons can do that as well. So we're all available here. And like we said previously, even if you come and your specific liaison is not there, we will find somebody to show your student where their classes are, where their LC is, and get them acclimated to the building. So we are all here to support your students in their transition.
Can I just add something?
Yeah. Right. Oh, let me do that thing.
I just wanted to add one thing. Your student does not have to find every room the first day. That's one thing that people are very concerned about. They arrive, every single 6th grader goes into a central location. It's usually in the gym or in the auditorium. They switch it up, so they will know. And they are escorted from there to their classroom, to their advisory classroom with their advisory teacher, and they stay there pretty much the majority of that first day, just getting an orientation to their schedule and to everything that they need. So you are definitely more than welcome and highly encouraged to come in beforehand to meet the liaisons and to take a tour. But if you're on vacation and you can't, do not worry, because that first day, the kids are not expected to know exactly where to go. All they have to do is walk in the front door, and there are people that escort them to the central location, and then from there, they're escorted to their classroom.
Maybe Jess Falconer, I see that you're still here. How do you support that in your specific program?
Sure. It's tricky because it looks different for every kiddo. We've been creative sometimes when fifth graders come up to the middle school. We work closely with our elementary counterparts if students are already identified as being in the skills program. So if beneficial and if available on the day that they come, it's a busy day when the fifth graders come to visit the middle school, but we sometimes will have the kids like at least come see our space or meet us. If students are recommended for ESY services, that could be a helpful time. Not every summer do we do ESY as the program teachers. When we do, obviously it's helpful to meet us, but also obviously to meet the other students within the program that they may interact with. So again, I would say that looks pretty different based on the student profile, but those are some options we've used in the past. And then I would say everything we do is pretty similar to what Rachel just described as well about before school starts, and definitely available like once the letter goes out about the liaison, working on those individual things that need to be figured out about like transitions in the morning or any other things. If like there's anything we need to think about for like lunch or snacks or any of those little details, we're happy to do so.
Thanks, Jess.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
We have two questions about Learning Center really versus every other day as compared to daily Learning Center. So Elise wanted to speak to that also in conjunction with kind of how that decision is made.
Great.
Okay, so your child's current liaison in grade 5 should be reaching out about the transition and whether they recommend 3 times a cycle or 6 times a cycle. Some spring meetings have already happened, and sometimes this happens at your child's conference, which is now or next Tuesday or Wednesday. So it's all happening in the moment. If there are questions around the recommendation or you want further information from the liaison, your team chair at your elementary school can join you in that conversation, or Leah and I can also help answer those questions or join meetings as needed at the elementary school. But it's your fifth grade liaison is your first point of contact.
And just to clarify, not all students have Learning Center or that level of support on their IEP. So the frequency and whether they even receive that service is a determination from the teams, and those are all things happening now at the elementary schools.
Thanks. And Christina, our last question that we haven't addressed, someone asked about how many students are assigned to each liaison. So I don't know if you can talk about numbers, but then how that kind of breaks down in terms of actually supporting the student.
Breakdown. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I can share numbers. The nature of our student needs is really has changed post-COVID, and maybe that was even happening before COVID. So our goal here at the middle school is to keep those caseloads at a reasonable, amount of students. And so typically 6th grade, around 9 to 12 students, I would say, and that fluctuates each year dependent on enrollment and those students identified for services. Is there a part that is, can you repeat the second part of that question?
I want to say
No, I was just thinking it might be helpful that while there may be, let's say 10 students on the caseload, that's not really what Learning Center looks like.
Oh,
so
yes,
the
thank you.
support isn't happening in that
so
entire setting.
Chime in, and besides Anne.
Thank you.
Do you want me to mute?
Yep.
Yeah, so even if, say, I had 10 students on my caseload, the Learning Center is really divided up. So 10 of them are not together at the same time. There might be 4 and 5, maybe 5 and 5, 3 and 4. So it's it's very small. It's smaller than everyone altogether.
Anyone want to add anything?
And the same is true for support. If a student receives support in an inclusion class from a second adult, it is not all 10 of those special education students together.
Right.
They are broken apart.
Yeah. Does anyone want to say anything about that?
I can speak to that. Yeah, so within inclusion, not every student who's identified with an IEP receives inclusion support. So so if I had 10 kids and I had 3 kids that didn't have inclusion support, they would not be receiving the same support as the students that would within the inclusion setting. That being said, we have TAs that work throughout the school. So even if I had 6 kids that receive inclusion support, it might be broken down that like I, the special educator, might have 4 kids that I follow around throughout the day, and TA might have 2 that they follow around. So it's not necessarily the case that we would be following around 6 students in a rotation throughout the day.
Thanks, Ari. It's our intent to make sure that these groupings in the core classes, academic classes, stay heterogeneous. And so it's not our intent to kind of make sure all students are in one class, and that doesn't necessarily, support our inclusion philosophy. Okay, next question, or any other questions?
Nope, that's it. We don't have any more in the chat box.
Wonderful. Thank you so much to our families and guardians for joining us. If you want to access this as a recording, it will be shared with elementary school teams. You have met some of us, and I encourage you to reach out to either me or our team chairs or through your team chairs at the elementary school with any questions that might come to you afterwards, or any special support you feel your child might need through this transition process. And so we're going to say goodbye. And thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to our presenters. Bye, everyone.